Good morning and welcome to the Jacob Pyle Show, starring Jacob Pyle, featuring Taryn Ray Smith, Zach Brown, and tonight's guest, Christina Erne. Ladies and gentlemen, from his studios in Kokomo, Indiana, your host, Jacob Pyle.
Thank you, Jeff. And now it is with great pleasure and great pride to welcome back to our show my sister from another mother, my permanent co-host of the Jacob Pyle Show, Taryn Ray Smith.
Oh, well, thanks, Jacob, for the kind and thoughtful words. It truly means a lot to me. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Jacob Pyle Show for this Saturday night, Sunday morning, March 28th, 2026. So glad to have you with us. Our guest tonight is Christina Erne, and we'll have her interview here in a little bit. First off, thanks to Zach Brown for filling in for me the last 2 weeks. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling wonderful. I'm feeling rested. Now, if you can recall from the last 2 weeks, we are bringing back the host conversation segment of the show. Jacob has in front of him a topic and a list of questions, none of which were shared with me prior to taping. And if you're ready, Jacob, let's do this.
So about a week ago, if you were just joining us, Zach and I were talking about the tornadic activity that went through Indiana. I don't know if you saw the episode, Taryn, or not. First of all, we got lucky, not just once, but twice. While yes, we did get some very bad weather, we didn't get it as worse. Some of our folks up north have been getting it. Knox, North Judson area, they were hit hard with an EF2 tornado. From what I heard, 3 people were killed. At least 3 people were killed. Not sure if that's the actual total or not. Houses collapsed, people were trapped in houses. There was a mess all around. Now, fun fact, have you ever watched The Wizard of Oz?
Of course I have. Being from Kansas and having a little dog, I'm just like Dorothy.
Dorothy and Toto, yeah. In The Wizard of Oz, the Oz scenes were filmed in Technicolor, while Dorothy's scenes back in Kansas were filmed in, I would say black and white, but technically it's sepia tone, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So basically, this tornado comes by, picks up the house off its foundation, and the house lands in the land of Oz, and the rest of the story kind of unfolds from there. Luckily, it's pretty much it's a fictional story. I'll tell you that much. But we do have someone, a real person who actually lives in Kansas with us today to answer this burning question. Has there been any real tornadoes that went through Kansas, Tara?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, just a few weeks ago, and this might have been right around when you all were experiencing that, we had a tornado warning, tornado watch in the area, and my dad and I had gone to bed not too far earlier, about 30 minutes after we all called it a night. All of a sudden we hear the sirens, and my dad, our dog, and I had to go down in the basement. It didn't last for very long. But yeah, fortunately, I think it just kind of went past the Kansas area. But oh yes, I mean, I remember hiding in the basement as a kid. Fortunately, I've never experienced a super damaging tornado, knock on wood, but I will say it's been really kind of warm here for this time this year in the Midwest. We were up to 90 degrees 2 days ago, and now we're back down to 38. And I think sometimes when you have that really kind of mild winter partnered with a really warm spring, it can be a breeding ground for like hail and tornadoes. So it's just part of living in the Midwest, but you do want to be prepared and keep your eye on the weather. I'm glad you're safe and okay.
Thank you. I will say this too, because if you watched last week's show, Zach and I were talking about things you can actually prepare, and I was telling Zach about how I live on the third floor of an apartment building, and how the apartment really doesn't have that much as far as, we don't have an underground basement.
Yeah.
And there's no really designated shelter space on the first floor. Well, I came up with a brilliant solution to the not having a tornado shelter problem, and you are more than welcome to voice your opinion on this as well, Taryn. So I actually rent a storage unit, an interior storage unit that's not too far from my apartment building. And before you guys start blowing up the comments on this, are you crazy? It's basically a big interior storage unit, and it's an enclosed space. So during the really bad storm we had on Saturday, I decided to hunker down inside my storage unit. I was there for maybe an hour, 2 hours, something like that, and then I was able to get myself home safely.
I think for a lot of people who don't have a basement or live up on a higher level, I don't think that's a bad idea. Now, I'm not a tornado professional. I'm certainly not a meteorologist, but just going on the basic things that they tell you to do, you want to get as low to the ground or underground if possible. And if you're in a storage unit, those are usually on ground level. Like you said, if you have one it's not on the outside, if you can get a storage unit that's maybe in like the center, I would say that's definitely safer than being on the third floor of any building. I think that's a pretty nifty solution you've concocted.
Now, what now? Now, do not attempt, folks, ladies and gentlemen, if your storage unit is outside, do not attempt to do this, because
Right.
most times, more than not, the storage unit, like the storage unit is kind of like, I don't know how they build these storage units, but they're not really the outdoor ones, at least, are not built safely to where you can actually safely kind of store your way inside and protect yourself. That's pretty much that's pretty much that's pretty much one of those things where it could damage your life or property or things like that, and most outdoor storage units don't have that accountability. So if you hunker down in an outdoor storage unit and a tornado comes by and takes you with it, then that's a very serious thing right there. So I would
Yeah.
not advise you doing that. But
No.
if you have an interior storage unit, though, as long as it's like it's built sturdy, things like that, and it's on ground level, you're good.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, I'll reiterate what you said. None of what Jacob and I are saying are literal safety recommendations. You should speak to people who are certified, like official firefighters and all of those different things, people who take care of human safety. Neither of us are certified in that, but both having grown up in the Midwest and having experiences, what they always teach you is, if you don't have a basement, go to a bathroom that has a bathtub and get in the bathtub, I know is a common one that they say. And yeah, there are places in the Midwest. I don't know, Texas is the South, but it's also kind of mid-region. So it kind of covers both, where most people there don't have basements, I believe. So that's a little precarious, but whatever you do, keep your eyes on the weather and take shelter wherever you can. Some people are going to have more options for shelter than others, but definitely follow your local and national weather advisory.
Yes, absolutely. So we still have about 2 minutes and 45 seconds left before we have to go to break. How have things been in the last week or so? Actually, it's been what, a week since you were gone. How's
Yeah,
things been for you?
I've been doing good. I've been loving that spring is heading our way. That always makes me happy. I am about to, yeah, no, I'm just working on all sorts of stuff with my business that I'm excited about. One thing that happened just in the past day or so, that our viewers may or may not know, that I'm very open about sharing. I grew up with a mom with Munchausen or factitious disorder, which is basically when someone makes themselves sick or claims to be sick or makes their kids sick or people in their lives sick on purpose. One of the most, it's been referenced in pop culture a lot, but I've decided to start sharing my story there more on social media than I have for a few years. And this video that I just did really blew up, and a lot of people are interested in that as an ongoing series. So that's something that I'm going to be sharing more about on my socials, just because I'm always all about spreading awareness. And I feel like people understand, they've heard of the disorder more than they had previously. So it's always good to feel like I'm making a difference with some of the content that I'm making, even if it means I have to be a bit vulnerable. So that's kind of what I've been up to this morning and just in the past couple days.
Yeah, I'm glad you're sharing that story too. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, for those who just now joining us, Terran's socials on Instagram, and I'm assuming some of the other ones as well, at Terran Ray Smith, TerranRae, then Smith, all one word.
Yes. I'm most active on Instagram and TikTok. I post on Snapchat too. That's Hey Taryn. But yes, those are my main two channels, and those are where I'll be sharing that ongoing series. So yeah, anybody who's survived any kind of trauma, I think that even though it's a topic that not everybody can relate to having experienced, I think everyone can relate to having experienced some kind of toxic people in their lives, some kind of mental health, whether it's with themselves or someone that they know. So I'm always happy to talk about that stuff. Thanks, Jacob.
You're welcome. All right. We are now going to go to our first commercial break. Terran, take it away.
We'll be back with part 1 of Jacob's interview with Christina Erne in a moment. But first, let's turn it over to Zach Brown, who has this week's On This Date trivia question. Zach, take it away.
Thank you so much, Taryn. On this date, March 28th, 1955, this Oklahoma girl turned country singer was born. You know, even at such a young age, she still can't get the blues. What's the name of the country singer? I'll have the answer for you when the Jacob Pyle Show continues. Welcome back, everybody. Let's return to this week's On This Date trivia question. On this date, March 28th, 1955, this Oklahoma girl turned country singer was born. You know, even at such a young age, she still can't get the blues. What's the name of the country singer? The answer? Reba McEntire.
Welcome back. Our guest for tonight is a weather lady for WJAR, the NBC affiliate in Providence, Rhode Island. If you missed last week's show, Jacob and Zach both mentioned that she and her hubby recently welcomed their very first baby in their lives, so congratulations to them. Here's part 1 of Jacob's conversation with Christina Erne.
One thing I should point out, you and I have a fact in common that we both work weird shifts. By that I mean...
Definitely.
You mostly do the weather for the morning newscast. People think, oh yeah, I get up every morning and the first thing I will watch when I wake up is your morning newscast. Tune in for a half hour, get informed, have me a bowl of cereal and head off to work. Or in my case, come home, turn on the news, have a bowl of cereal and head off to bed. But for you guys, your day starts pretty early. In fact, so early that it's long before everybody else is awake. How do you do it?
It is definitely something that you have to train your body for, and it takes years. I've been doing it for almost 5 years, the early morning shift. So it's something that takes a lot of patience on the part of your family, getting used to, your scheduling changes. But I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning because our programming starts at 4:30 in the morning. Our station is WJAR in Providence, Rhode Island. So 4:30 in the morning is when we go on air. So before that, not only do I have to put together my forecasts, but I also have to do my hair and makeup. I have to do mic checks. I have to do a couple recordings for later in the day. So my day starts long before that 4:30 a.m. time frame. So I have to give myself plenty of time beforehand, and that kind of leads me into going to bed obviously early, like you're familiar with, but I'm able to spend time with some of my family and still kind of communicate with my friends. I end up taking a big nap in the middle of the day, so between about 1 and 4 o'clock I am completely asleep in the afternoon.
Okay, cool. I will say this because how do you, I do have to ask you this one question though, and I get asked this all the time as a night shift worker. How do you, when you said you go to bed in the afternoon, how do you manage your social life and when you're working these weird shifts?
Well, it's really tough. I mean, I have to say I'm not very fun on the weekends, that's for sure, because I really go to sleep, or at least get very tired after 7 or 8 o'clock maximum in the evening. So I typically opt to do more daytime activities with friends. And I think the one good thing about it is that I am an early riser. So when most of my friends, by the time they get up, they have a message or a text message waiting from me. So I'm kind of their early morning friend. And especially with a couple of my friends who have just had children, and they're up at all hours of the night, I'm there. I'm awake at 3 o'clock if they're nursing, or 4:30 in the morning when they're nursing. So something's always around.
Yeah, I was gonna get ready to ask you, because I know the 5 a.m. Well, obviously the 6 a.m. and the 7 a.m. Well, of course, a lot of people are getting up and going to work. But I was gonna say, what kind of viewers do you normally get at 4:30 or 5 a.m. normally?
We have a surprising a lot of viewers at that time. It's usually a lot of older people who like to get up very early, or people who do have to go into work by 7 o'clock. If a business opens at 7, or if a coffee shop opens at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, they're getting up at that time frame. We do have overnight people who are going to sleep at that time. But if you think about diners and cafes that are open at 6 or 7, there's all employees there, doctors who might start at 7 o'clock in the morning. So that's our clientele. And you'd be surprised, I think, how many people in recent years have opted for an earlier morning lifestyle because since COVID, oh, there's my cat. Since COVID and after COVID, I think a lot of people have decided to go to the gym earlier in the morning and maybe work out before work or before school. So that's the kind of clientele we have.
All right. So going back to the topic of weather, what made you interested in getting into the wonderful world of weather?
Well, one of the things that I really liked about weather to begin with is that I've just always loved science in general. My father was in the Coast Guard, and he would go out on ships for 6 weeks at a time when I was very young. And so I was always very interested in the ocean, climate science around the coastlines, and I live in Rhode Island, so we're surrounded by water everywhere you turn. And so I've always had that passion. When I went to Boston University for college, I knew I wanted to get into communication. So initially I went to be a reporter, but when I was interning at a local TV station in Boston, I was speaking to a meteorologist who urged me to get into meteorology. He said, if you love science as much as you do, we need more women in science. And he said, you would be welcomed with open arms if you became a meteorologist because, you know, they are just really searching for more women. So I was actually a reporter up in Bangor, Maine, very, very far north, for a couple of years while I was also getting my meteorology degree at the same time. And it kind of took off from there.
Cool. Now, the majority of our time together tonight is going to be learning about weather, myths and facts about stuff like tornadoes and severe weather. We might even, if we have time, delve into severe weather related stories that I have heard of and maybe get your thoughts on. So I think the question here says, so first off, tell us about what it's like to be a meteorologist. You already told us about that. So I know the answer to this, but just to kind of educate the viewers a little bit here, what is the difference between a watch and a warning?
That's a fantastic question. Some people actually have really good descriptions of it on like TikTok and stuff too. A lot of videos are kind of taking off about it. A watch basically urges you to understand that the pieces are in place for the potential for severe weather. So the storm has not come together yet, but there are certain pieces of the storm that are readily available in the atmosphere. So a watch is basically saying this could happen because we've got these few things in place. For instance, for a tornado, you know, a watch would say, okay, well, we're seeing instability in the atmosphere. We're seeing our winds pick up. All we're waiting for is that rotation, and then we would issue a warning. So a watch is such that the pieces exist, and then a warning is that these pieces that exist together right now, so you need to take shelter. So even in the case of not even necessarily just a tornado, we have winter storm watches and warnings. We get the watch when we know that there's a lot of cold air. We know that there's the potential for snowfall. We might just not know how much snowfall. And so that warning is then issued when we're closer to the event and we know exactly what those final pieces might be. And I mentioned TikTok because there are a lot of people taking to social media to kind of explain this to viewers. And one way is by donuts, believe it or not. When you see like a blank donut, I don't even know what you would call like just a normal plain donut.
Just a glazed donut, original donut, something like that.
Yeah, like without any toppings, even without the glaze. You've got the donut, you've got a pile of sprinkles, you have a pile of icing. That's what a watch would be. But when you have the actual donut with the whole glaze situation and the whole sprinkle situation all together, that's the warning.
We have to pause for this break. We will present part 2 of Jacob's conversation with Christina Erne in a moment. Stay with us.
If you'd like to be a guest on the Jacob Pyle Show, send Jacob an email. His email address is jtpyle1@aol.com. That's also where to email if you'd like a DVD copy of the show. Please include the air date seen on screen when ordering. The DVD is $10. Residents outside of Indiana will pay an additional $5 shipping and handling fee. Once again, here's Jacob.
Welcome back. If you are just now joining us, we are replaying my episode with Christina Erne. So here's part 2 of our conversation. We were talking before the break about watches and warnings. Now let's talk. I want to talk about. There's a video. I wanted to get your thought on it. This is a perfect example of take the warning seriously when you hear a tornado warning.
Okay.
When there was a video, it was an ABC affiliate in Ohio, and this destructive tornado, there was this big, dangerous, destructive tornado that touched ground, and it was in the middle of, and they were showing the Bachelor. You watch The Bachelorette, don't you?
Yeah, I actually do, yeah.
Yeah, they were showing The Bachelorette. And then all of a sudden, and I'm going to do my best radio announcer's voice here, they come on in the middle of The Bachelorette and they say, "We interrupt this regularly scheduled program to present this weather bulletin." And this guy comes out and says, "Okay, everybody take shelter now. This isn't..." And yet all the people on social media were commenting, "Put the Bachelorette back on, put the Bachelorette back on." And the weather guy literally snapped. And he was like, "No, we're not going back to your program. This is serious business we're talking about here." Have you seen that video?
I've seen it, yeah, and I've seen a lot of things like it. There's been a couple times during big sporting events that has also happened, and yeah.
Yeah, I kind of understand the feeling. When I was a kid, and I'm sure you were the same way, when you were home from school or something, you would turn on The Price is Right or something like that. And then they would always interrupt, like if the president's got something to say or whatever, they will always break away during The Price is Right. And I was like, yeah, so I kind of get the feeling, but again, take the warning seriously.
Absolutely. I think it makes sense to a lot of people, to heed the warnings, but some people just simply don't get it. Some people are even kind of selfish. Look, when there's a tornado warning in place, for instance, that is such a small part of a community that's typically under a tornado warning. Those areas that are under tornado warnings were only a few miles wide and a few miles in length. So if you're talking about, a big county in Ohio, or like if you're in Texas and there's a very, very big county or multiple counties, and there's this little warning box, it's absolutely going to feel very inconvenient to people who are outside of that box, because they're going to say, well, this doesn't apply to me, so why is my programming being stopped? We live in such a fast-paced world nowadays that we want everything that we want in this specific moment. But the reality is that broadcast TV goes to everybody in that community. So doesn't matter where you live, you're going to get those tornado warnings. And I think the thing that a lot of people do have to put aside, yes, it's awful for that moment if you miss a kick in the football game or if you miss part of The Bachelorette, but it is actually critical to saving people's lives. And as a meteorologist, it's actually our jobs to be a public servant. That's why during COVID, we still had to go into work. We were not able to stay home or anything like that. We do a job for a public service and a public safety standpoint. So I know it could be super inconvenient, but there's a good reason for it.
Right. All right. I want to talk about obviously severe thunderstorms. You should be aware of severe thunderstorms too, but I especially want to hit tornadoes. So let me explain to you my little, and what to do if a tornado warning is issued for your area. First of all, let me explain to you my situation. Maybe you can kind of help me out. So I live upstairs in this 2-story duplex in Noblesville.
Okay.
So I don't really have a place to go shelter. like nearby or whatever. What would you do if you were in my situation?
So the first thing that I would recommend is go into the most innermost part of whatever floor you're on. So if you're not able to get into a basement space, if you're not able to get to the first floor, then whatever the central most room is in your space, get there, away from any windows and doors, because we know that tornadoes or high winds or flying debris can break windows. So you want to get away from any kind of windows and doors and get to the most innermost part of your house. You can also go in the bathtub. Sounds kind of silly, but you're surrounded typically by ceramic or very sturdy material compared to maybe bureaus that could fall over or picture frames that could come off the wall. So interior most part of your house, no windows, no doors, bathroom, no water running.
All right, cool. Now, the reason why I wanted to bring up this whole earlier when I said this whole we interrupt this program, all that. I was I don't share anything private outside of here, but I wanted to say that I appreciate, like I told you this before we taped you, I appreciate what you guys do every day as weather people. And when we were originally going to do our little meeting earlier, but we had to postpone which I understood completely, because there was a snowstorm that was hitting the Rhode Island area. Tell us about the snowstorm first and foremost.
So this was a good one. It was back in late February, and as kind of a refresher for those who might not know about the Northeast, typically we get some pretty good nor'easters. We get a lot of snow. Typically we see anywhere between like 20 and 35 inches of snow a season. So that's the 3 months of December, January, and February. But last winter, 2022 to 2023, we got 10 inches of snow total for the whole season. It was an incredibly dry season. So this year, any little bit of snow, people have been getting very excited about. So back in February, we did get a pretty good snowstorm. And it was right before Valentine's Day. It was the day before Valentine's Day. And we got anywhere from low end 3 inches to 9 or 10 inches in some spots. And it was what we call a classic nor'easter. A nor'easter is northeasterly winds. So it's typically a coastal low pressure system that grazes our south coastline, and then it continues up towards the Gulf of Maine. And those northeasterly winds wrap back into Massachusetts and Connecticut and Rhode Island and even parts of New Hampshire, brings additional snowfall and really high winds. So that's pretty much what we saw. It was a one-day hard hitter. The only issue with this snowstorm was the track changed kind of last minute. This doesn't happen very often, but in this case, it did. Meteorology is an imperfect science. We've learned so much in the past 30 to 50 years, but it's still not perfect. So the track changed last minute, and a lot of people in Boston were very disappointed because they were forecast to get a lot more snow than what they actually got. But Rhode Island got crushed.
How much snow did you guys end up getting? You remember?
The city of Providence got between 6 and 7 inches, so half a foot. And remember, we were coming off of a season where we didn't get any snow, so anything sounds big to us. And we were looking forward to it too. So it wasn't like a foot or two, but everyone was pretty psyched about it. Some communities, though, did get closer to about 12 inches. I think the maximum was around 10.5. So it's pretty good across Rhode Island. Massachusetts ended up only getting a trace to a couple inches.
Well, that's good. So we still got about 45 seconds left before we have to take this first break. Just real briefly off the top of your head, what was your favorite weather story that you've covered?
Ooh, that's a good one. So I was working in Albany, New York for a while in a mobile storm tracker van at one TV station. And there was a time we were covering a severe summer storm. So there were a couple tornadoes, some high wind, and I was in the mobile storm tracker when we were trying to chase down a tornado. And there was golf ball sized hail that was hitting this vehicle, and it was pretty terrifying. I was on air at the time that we were driving, and it was pelting the van, and you couldn't even really hear my voice over the roar of the hail. It was cool.
Well, that is an amazing interview. Unfortunately, we have run out of time.
Before we leave tonight, next week is Easter weekend, so whatever you do, don't try to look for a new episode of The Jacob Pyle Show next week because we won't be here. The Jacob Pyle Show is going to be taking a well-deserved Easter vacation. We'll be back in 2 weeks from tonight, same bat time, same bat channel, where we will conclude Jacob's conversation with Christina Erne. Plus, we will also begin a 3-part conversation that Jacob conducted with the one and only Zach Brown. That's coming up in 2 weeks on The Jacob Pyle Show, and we hope to see you then.
From my studios in Kokomo, Indiana, I'm Jacob Pyle.
And from my home in Kansas City, Kansas, I'm Taryn Ray Smith. For Christina Erne and all of us on The Jacob Pyle Show, thank you all for watching, stay safe, and happy Easter, everybody.
I'm Jeff Jeffries. The opinions expressed on this pre-recorded program are solely those of the participants and does not necessarily reflect the views of this program or Pyle Media Ventures Incorporated. Pyle Media Ventures Incorporated produces this program and is solely responsible for its content.